Hey, this is Dave from MetalEpidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What is up, guys? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from UK Grime-Metal band Hacktivist. The band's new album Hyperdialect will be released on June 18th via UNFD. So, Hacktivist, we've pretty much been following these guys for a long time. Anyway,
that's the start. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty much. We interviewed these guys actually in Glasgow when that would be about the time they released their first album Outside the Box. Must have been around 2016ish, something like that, I think.
Yep.
We interviewed Jay and Ben in Glasgow. It was a good interview. Since that album though, they've released a kind of load of singles. I think there was even a 4-track EP released a while back as well. Hyperdialect is the band's second full-length album, and this release now features new guitarist James Hewitt and vocalist Djent Maxey. I say new, they've both been in the band for a few years, I think, but this is the first Hacktivist album that they've been on, so James Hewitt is also on production duties for Hyperdialect. Although, like, we are all aware who Hacktivist are, I'll be honest, they kind of fell off my radar a little bit. So I was interested to hear how the band sounded now with a different vocalist alongside Jay, and in particular a new guitarist that I'm assuming would take a role in the kind of writing process after their previous guitarist Timothy left the band. But to be honest, it's clear from the writing of this music must be a collaborative thing, because this album is still very much a Hacktivist album. You know, it doesn't really sound massively different from, you know, what they were doing before. From the opening track, you're welcomed with that, you know, that the kind of detuned, the thick kind of djenty riffage that they've always had. And you know, like I've got to give them their dues right now. These guys, they can write a groove. My God, can they write a groove? That opener and the album in general has this bounce to it the whole way through. My head nodded along to this pretty much for its entirety, and there's a few riffs in there where I made the stank face as well, but like pretty much my head was just banging along with this album the whole way through. Production wise, it's pretty kind of girthy sound, and you know, the guitar tone has a lot of weight to it. The bass adds that kind of extra bit of thickness. And the drums are very punchy, which I think is exactly what you want from a Hacktivist production, something that's going to add, you know, more energy and a bit more horsepower to these like massive riffs. What I was not expecting in the first track was a section of blast beats and riffs that lean into almost like black and death metal territory. Like, I was just like, what's going on? I mean, it only lasts for about 20 seconds or so, but I completely stopped what I was doing, and I rewound the track just to hear it again, and I was just like, where did that come from? Like, when have they ever done anything like that? So like, just from that alone, I was like, all right, okay, this could be interesting. Like, I was kind of my interest was piqued, you know, for the rest of this like 40 odd minute album. Just that kind of moment of deviation from what I was expecting was enough to really kind of get my interest and my attention. They don't really experiment with those styles again, to be honest. It's kind of back to what they do after that. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, in my opinion. I think that it's that kind of huge sound that we've become accustomed to from Hacktivist. It's not to say that there isn't any, you know, changes on this, because there were still a couple of moments throughout the album that grabbed my attention. Turning Tables, for one, had serious Prodigy vibes, like mixed in with these like the kind of machine tight riffs. I was just, that had a very kind of Prodigy sound about it.
There's a specific synth sound, or there's a loop that they're using that sounds like it's come from like a Prodigy patch or something that they've put in. It's identically the same sound that they use on at least one or two of their tracks. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Currency was an absolute banger. I loved that track, and I loved the kind of background synths that they put in as well. Added a real nice kind of ominous layer at times. A couple of nice little kind of production tricks in there as well. They also had additional vocals from Aaron Matz of Betraying the Martyrs on the title track, which was really cool. His kind of lower tone was a nice contrast on that track. And Planet Zero, again, really liked those like industrial electronic kind of elements that they added in. I thought that sounded really cool. It added, it kind of made the track sound even bigger because of those little additions. Tonally though, this sounds like a really pissed off Hacktivist. That's the feeling I was getting when I was listening to this. This isn't so much an album about big catchy choruses or trying to kind of please the kind of mainstream. It sounds like a band that have kind of come through, I suppose, kind of testing times, and I think probably the pandemic has only heightened that kind of drive and desire to put out something with a message and to deliver it in the shape of a musical hand grenade, so to speak. They definitely sound fired up on Hyperdialect. They're covering everything from like politics to the music industry to the media, themes that are clearly summoning that inner rage from the band, and I like that, especially vocally, between Jay and their new vocalist Djent. Their kind of lyrical kind of venom sounded really believable. I like that they've added a vocalist that has more of a kind of texture to his voice. The two vocalists before, Jay and Ben, they were very similar tonally, and they had great chemistry. Don't get me wrong, Jay and Ben worked really well together. But I like the kind of the tonal and texture kind of differences between Jay and Djent Maxi. I think it brings something more interesting to the table. In particular, Jay, I think he's really on top of his game lyrically. I think his delivery is so well executed. His choice of lyrics, his phrasing flows really well. But I think overall, though, I think this is delivered really well. I think the band sound really tight. The production is hefty. The riffs on tracks like Lifeform sound massive. Vocally, they both add a kind of different style to the overall mix, which I really enjoyed. I think there are bits of it that are a little repetitive musically, but that aside, I actually think this is a really good follow-up for Hacktivist. I actually preferred this to Outside the Box, their last album. Personally, I think the new members have slotted in really well, and they sound really in sync with each other as a band. As I say, I loved the little moments of synths or electronics they added in. I thought that made a big difference. They didn't overdo it, but when they did add it in, it felt very natural. So I enjoyed this. I enjoyed it way more than I thought it was going to, because, as I said, it kind of disappeared from my radar for a bit. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but and even they did drop. There was one of the singles that I did hear before the album came out, and I thought, yeah, sounds okay. But actually, when I heard it within the album, I actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, enjoyable one from me. Duncan, what did you make of this one?
This is an interesting one for me because I've never been the biggest Hacktivist fan. Mostly because they are a band that I very much feel like have a particular formula and they don't deviate from the formula. So this is a band that I can, when I put on, I pretty much know exactly what I'm going to get. And the single that they released, I know you're saying that you liked it in the context of the album. I think it's probably the most boring song on there. I think there's not enough happening in it. It's very repetitive. It's very, very samey. Like, the difference between a verse and a chorus isn't really that identifiable. So it kind of just sounds like one long track. It sounds like one long verse to me. That being said, taking that out of the equation, there's a whole hell of a lot to enjoy about this release. I, unlike you, would have preferred, especially on your opening track, once you've given a little bit of blast and a little bit of ferocity and shown that you can do it, utilise it more. To me, it's almost like it's a bit of a cock tease, you know what I mean? It invites you in with something which is out with their sound, but, you know, in the confines of the music, I would never have expected blast beats or anything blackened in there. And they've shoved that in there, and it works. It works really, really, really well, and it shows dexterity. Might not necessarily work with the grime vocals, but like flashes of that in their music, I think, make it a bit more interesting. I mean, like Hacktivist will never have problems when it comes to creating bouncy headbanging riffs. They seem to have an unending supply of them, and every verse, you know, you headbang, you get in it. They have great grasp of those little bits that kind of link those kind of jumpy riffs. They got a really, really great grasp of that, specifically with some of the drum percussive stuff they do with fills and all the rest. There's enough to keep you going. I love the use of synth work in here in electronics. I think this is actually, if anything, is a big step up on this one, and I would echo what you say. I prefer this to the previous release. I think that is better utilised in the construction of the songs. It's more varied. In the past, it's been used purely, for the most part, as a way to accentuate the kind of melody vocals, create uplifting segments. But no, they were using some actual production wizardry here to add bits in specifically in the verses and give it a bit of oomph behind it, which I thought worked really well. Tracks like Lifeform for me are where the band totally hit their stride. This is a 5-minute song for a band that is primarily known for not writing 5-minute songs. And it works. It really, really works. There's enough twists and turns and grooves to keep you really, really interested and grounded in their sound. Like I say, I don't particularly like the single that came out, and I'm still of that opinion. I do think they do sound a bit more pissed off is the sound that you're getting from them. And I think a band like this needs that. I think the previous release, the biggest complaint from me was it sounded complacent. It sounded like a band that were resigned to the fact that this is what they were going to sound like, and so here's another album of what they were going to sound like. And to hear them now, specifically with the change in vocalist as well, and I really like his tone, because it is so different from Jay's vocals. It makes it stand out. Plus, there's little elements of almost kind of like a sick snarl in there on his vocals that I really quite liked, you know, where I thought it sounded different enough that when they're battling off against each other in tracks, I can kind of feel the camaraderie and at the same time the conflict. And that to me, if you're going to have two vocalists, can't fucking stress this enough, if you're going to have two vocalists in your band, they need to be different. They need to sound, they need to have different ranges, different cadences, different styles. And the problem with Hacktivist is, out with the fact that the vocalist would have to breathe, one guy could do all that. Really, like, genuinely, I know they have to breathe, and that's why you get someone else to do the other bits. But the tone just never really shifted that much out from it. It's a lot less melodic in the choruses than previous releases, and I thought that would be to the detriment. And actually, in a lot of respects, I don't now, having listened to it twice. I actually think, if anything, you'd be able to craft some of these songs into a live set that'll make the set sound more interesting. Because, like I say, the formula was already... It's almost like at times they had a bit of they didn't sound like, but their song construction was very Linkin Park, if you know what I mean. In the past, you know, they had that sort of, here comes the big singy chorus, but now we're back into the rap bit, and we're doing the rap bit and singy chorus. This time you're not getting that as much, and I think that that's a good thing. Production is a Hacktivist production. You would not know anything had changed at all. It's still pretty much on the money. Guitars sound thick as fuck. Drums are huge sounding. Vocals are mixed incredibly well, which you need for grime style vocals because the delivery's quick. It fits all great in. And like I say, I liked what they were doing in the background. This is a pleasant surprise, because after that single, I'd said to you guys both openly, I don't even think I want to hear this album. If this is what they're touting as the new Hacktivist sound, not interested. And still off the basis of that single, which I think is the weakest song on the album, I'm not interested in that. Everything else in this, I'm very interested with. What I hope they do on the next album is they really start bringing in some of those other elements, specifically the harsher stuff, because they can do it. They can do it really well. That's the frustrating thing is, like, clearly your drummer can blast beat. Clearly you can shred riff. Just do a bit more of that. It adds texture, it adds change, it adds another level to your songwriting that is not like, it's not mandatory, but it makes it a bit more memorable in the long run. So yeah, I thought this was a good album for sure. I just would like, I don't know what I would like. I don't know what I expect from Hacktivist. That'd be like me saying I want blast beats from Limp Bizkit. You know what I mean? I don't actually want blast beats in a Limp Bizkit album. I want Limp Bizkit to kind of sound like Limp Bizkit. Hacktivist are the grime Limp Bizkit. Realistically, they're the djenty, grimy Limp Bizkit, and maybe that works for the most part. But they've certainly they've had something to prove on this one, I feel, and for the most part, it works. So
nice. Kyle, what do you think?
I actually completely disagree. I don't think this works at all. I mean, the first song was a bit. I mean, I got into it a little bit, but then the notes I have here say they sure are rhyming MC with MC a lot. Oh my god! Please stop saying MC.
MC.
It was like, holy fuck! If I have to hear anybody rap that word again in my life, I'm going to shoot first them, then myself, then come back and do it all over again. Because, oh my god, that just put me right off from the beginning. And I was like, great, it's one of those albums where they can't write fucking lyrics. And from all of the stuff that they said, the messages in the songs, in the lyrics, are actually really, really good. And I appreciate that a whole great deal. And I agree with a lot of what they were saying. And it speaks to me on a personal level and all that. And I'm right there with them. But the overproduced nature of the music really turned me off. The guitar tones were thick as fuck, but they were edited to death, as were the drums. And the vocals were pretty natural, but they kind of have to be in that grime style because otherwise it sounds bad and wrong, like the music did. But that's Hacktivist sounds, and you just kind of have to take it as it is. But about 4 or 5 tracks in, I was like, okay, I get how Hacktivist sounds. Are you going to change it up at all a little bit? And they were like, nah. So for the rest of it, it was just like, okay, cool, so Hacktivist sounds like Hacktivist and they do this, and it's kind of boring by about 6 tracks in, but other than that, I really enjoy their message. I do. I'm glad that people are coming out and saying this kind of stuff and being like truth to power kind of way with the art that they're making, and they're not just, you know, taking it in their stride and trying to hide away from it and go and do some distracting thing off to the side like some bands, and you know. But apart from that, I just think the music is like really, really, really good message, really great stuff in the lyrics, aside from the MC thing. But music fucking sucks.
Okay. Oh, Kyle, I don't really feel like you were like being honest there, Kyle. Like I feel like you should, you know.
My favourite thing is like my favourite thing here is before recording, I said I was in an angsty mood. I don't think I am now.
Okay. So ratings for Hyperdialect from Hacktivist. I thoroughly enjoyed this, way more than I thought it was gonna. I think they have tweaked their sound. It's so definitely Hacktivist, but I think they freshened it up with the use of the kind of electronics, the synths, little kind of industrial sounds. It's overproduced, but they've always been like that. That's their sound. You know what I mean? And I think personally, and for me, I think it elevates those kind of grooves, those big riffs that they have. So for me, I enjoyed it. I will probably put this at a 4 out of 5. Duncan?
I'm coming in marginally below you, 3.5 out of 5. Like I say, I still find them fairly formulaic in their song construction, but I do think there's enough, like having listened to, and I very rarely do the sort of stuff that Dave does, you know, like an actual review person and go back and listen to previous stuff. But I remember having listened to that previous album, and I purposely went back and listened to it, And to me, it shows growth, it shows change. They're definitely doing other bits and bobs here, for sure. And yeah, it's this to me is the epitome of an album that I don't have to test myself to listen to it, and I could probably put it on whenever, and I would be happy listening to it. So 3.5 out of 5.
Excellent. And Kyle.
Just saw Duncan's face go, fuck.
I'm just waiting for the penny to drop here, Kyle.
Oh no, what is it? I'm just going to come with a 3 out of 5. The messages in the music, in the lyrics are absolutely on point, and I really agree with those, but I don't like the music, but 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5. Okay. This one will drop on June 18th on UNFD. If you want to check out the band, it's facebook.com/Hacktivist band. I'll put a little link in the description below to their Facebook and any pre-orders for the album. That is the review. Thanks once again for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.